Hello and welcome. Today we are finally, after a long interlude, getting back to working on the Midwest radio set, which is sitting over here waiting for its clear lacquer. It's been sitting there all winter waiting for me while I was in Thailand, and I thought it's probably time, especially since I got hold of this turntable. And I think I mentioned it in a previous video. Mike of Midwest Radio bought this for me off of eBay and held it until I got back from Thailand. And Mike, I cannot thank you enough. And he even had the missing piece. Let me make sure we're in frame here. This unit was complete except it was missing this part of the drawer slide. And Mike had one and graciously sent it along to me. I probably could have come up with something, but having the original is just amazing. Really a simple slide, and something I found when I took it apart. Look at that screw. Now, I know somebody out there is going to say that's from the drawer whacking it repeatedly as they open it, but no, the threads are not distorted. I did metal work for several years after I first got out of the service, and I know what threads look like when they're distorted. This was drilled and tapped as an afterthought. You see the paint's missing here, and the reason for that is this goes into the cabinet. It's only held in two places. There's one screw on this end, one screw on that end, and then there's a hole in the cabinet for access to this screw. There's a hole from the bottom so that you can back this down. It doesn't even have to come out. It's only got to be turned down a little ways so that you can turn this down and slide the drawer out for servicing. And you can see, because the paint's missing, this was drilled as an afterthought. I found a screw in my junk box that had a good wide head, so that when this is threaded all the way up, it'll offer some support against this screw being tipped. And it matches the witness marks of the original screw. They're probably not showing up in the camera, very faint. But there's witness marks that they had a very broad head screw in here at one time. And nothing has ever touched on this side. If this was bent from, being whacked, there'd be a witness mark on both sides. When you put this in the cabinet, the hole that allows access to this doesn't align with this hole, which is probably the way they ordered it. But somebody made a mistake by 1 inch, and that's a very, 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 very common mistake in engineering, is to be off 1 inch or 100 thousandths. Those are the two most common mistakes. I did quality control inspection for several years, and when I'd be inspecting parts that came out of the fab, the two most common errors were 1 inch or 100 thousandths. It's just such an easy mistake to make. So somebody put this in the cabinet, came in from underneath and kind of drilled blind, and then they just tapped it and it ended up at an angle. Doesn't hurt it, still going to work fine, and the witness mark on the inside of the wooden cabinet, you can tell there's absolutely it's the same witness mark. So fairly common thing for them to do, I guess. Oh, another interesting thing, I found a maker's mark on here. This was manufactured by Baker Manufacturing Company, and the Baker Manufacturing Company has been in business for 150 years, and they have a hell of a history. I'm kind of a nut on the history of these different shops. 150 years, still in business. And if anyone's interested, in fact, I'll put the link, or I'll put the website down in the doobly-doo. You can just copy it if you're interested. A 40-page history of the Baker Manufacturing Company. They made all kinds of things. They made windmills, they made towers, they made steam engines, they made gasoline engines, they made oh gosh, they made propeller balancing equipment for the military during World War II. One of the first companies in the country to have profit sharing. They were loved. They had employees that worked there for 50 years. Just once they started working in this company, never left. A couple of times, unions came in and tried to unionize them, and the workers ran them off because they were so happy working at a factory that gave them profit sharing and treated them correctly, as it should be. Okay, enough of that. What I've got to do now is work on the mechanism. I don't have any 12-inch records. This unit will operate 10 or 12-inch records automatically. Oh, and please excuse the boom microphone with the hiss in the background. It's a crappy made offshore that somebody gave me, but the air conditioning's running in here, and I tried both with the boom mic and without it. And without it, the air conditioner just overwhelms the audio. It's extremely humid. It's what, the 5th or 6th of July now. Very, very humid here in New Hampshire this week, and I didn't want everything getting moldy and mildew down here, so I've got the air on. At any rate, this will automatically handle 10 or 12 inches. You can intermix a stack of 10 and 12-inch records on this unit, and it will automatically correct the placement of the tone arm of the pickup based on the record size. And it does that if a 12-inch record drops. It presses this little lever down. This thing has a place where it'll set, and then when the 12-inch record drops down, it releases that and decreases the amount of travel that the tone arm will travel. And on the next return cycle, this resets, and if it's a 10-inch record, it won't hit the little lever, and it'll drop on a 10-inch record. And if the next record that drops hits that little lever, it'll reduce the travel, and it'll sit on the 12-inch record start point. And there's two adjustments in here to dial that in precisely. It looks like, you can see how this stayed up and didn't fall back down. It looks like there might be a tiny hairspring missing from here, and you can't see it on the SAMs, or at least the photocopy of the SAMs. I have two SAMs originals on the way, but it shows that thing as an assembly. It doesn't break it down into the component parts. It just shows it as an assembly on here, calls it out as a complete unit. So there's no details to tell me if there's supposed to be a hairspring. Not sure if it's supposed to be there or not. Well, here's a close-up. And here's where I'm not sure if there's supposed to be a hairspring. There's a very wide groove like here, like it's designed to have a very small hairspring to return this little lever back up to the upright position. Now when it's triggered like so, this just stays remaining down, and when it triggers, or when it's released, it does pop back up, driven by the piece behind it. So I have to get this mechanism working and see if there's actually a piece missing or not. This whole upper piece is listed as an assembly on the SAMs, and they don't have a close-up of this actual section of it. I've got a scanned photocopy of the SAMs at present. I actually have two different versions of the SAMs for the 402D and the 402 coming, original copies. Maybe they'll be a little clearer, but if anybody is familiar with the Voice of Music number 402, if there's supposed to be a spring here, can you take a picture of it and email me? Because I'd like to know exactly how it's shaped. Obviously, it's coiled around here, probably 2 turns of a very fine hairspring wire. But where it latches, I don't see any witness marks, so I'm kind of leaning towards this is normal. But it just seems odd that they have this very large gap right in here next to it. Normally they would do that if there was going to be a hairspring in there. If not, they would normally, I would think this would be closer. But again, I don't know. The SAMS isn't clear on this. It calls this an entire assembly. It doesn't spell it out in individual pieces. It does list them, but it doesn't break it down. And, okay, we'll back away from that. Okay, now that you've seen that, what I want to do before I start cleaning this up, I have to fix this top. The veneer has come off. That's got to be repaired. The rest of it's in pretty good shape. I have to repaint it. There's paint missing there because the original guy who shipped this never tied the turntable down. And people who ship stuff, sell stuff on eBay, drive me crazy. It's so simple. You lift the platter off. There's 2 screws in here that you back, and this would have tied this down and prevented any damage. But it's not serious damage, so I'm not going to complain. And again, this is not Mike's fault. He took the box in, held it, and reshipped it to me. But the paint, the original shipper put tape on here, and even though it was, what are you going to do? The paint came off. They didn't prep aluminum well back in this period. They didn't have the chemical processes. Well, I guess they did because they were painting aircraft, but I think they were cutting corners, and they just sprayed the paint over the bare aluminum. I want to fire this thing up and try it out, and I think I'll be fine if I just separate these 2 wires right here, don't you think? I'll just go ahead and carefully pull these apart and plug this in. I should be able to test this. Maybe not. Maybe I'll put a new cord on here. But everything's here. That's what's important. Everything's here. I'll be able to fix this thing and get it back together. I'm going to replace this very sketchy power cord. There's an understatement. Somebody has chopped off the wires from the pickup, but that's okay. I can replace those with ease. All in all, it's not in bad shape. I've got to do some cabinet repair work here where the thing was bounced around and it's broken the wood. That's an easy fix. But first and foremost, let me get this power cord changed and drop a few drops of oil, and we'll see if the mechanism on here actually works. So give me a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, we've done some very basic maintenance. We had some things here that were so sticky this slide wouldn't even move, or when I got it to move it stayed back here. It wouldn't spring back into position. This needs a thorough cleaning, disassembly, lubrication, blah blah, I know that. But right now I want to make sure it's functional, because if it's not functional, I want to find out why. If it is, then after I take it apart and put it back together, if it's still functional, great. If it isn't, I know it's me. Not that there was something missing or bent out of alignment to begin with. Okay, let's see. Well, I hear the motor run. Maybe I didn't get behind the idler. Or maybe the idler is just too worn out, which is a distinct possibility. No, it appears to have a bunch of traction. So why not? Oh, it's not going in. Yeah. Felt like it had gone all the way down, but it hadn't. It really needs a new idler. The rubber on it's cracked and hardened. Well, I can hear it running. Okay, that part of the mechanism. Oh, there it goes. That's 10-inch. There it goes. Comes back. Splattered. Oh, I didn't see it drop one. I didn't see that part of the mechanism. Oh, it's stuck in. That's why I didn't see it move. Alright, let's try this again. The needle's no good. I'm not worried about it. Okay, it just dropped the next record, which means it hit that little lever. And this should be a 12-inch record. Yes, indeed. That went right to the 12-inch record position. Boy, it sure is slow to... There it goes. This should go back to the 10-inch position. In fact, let me put a 10-inch record on there. See how far off the alignment is. Yeah, it's off a little bit. Oh, rejected pretty quick that time. This record's got a big chip in it. Let me shut that off. Yeah, it is a big chip. Let me get a record that's not chipped over here. Unfortunately, I think I said already, I don't have any 12-inch. I only have 10-inch. Would be nice to... The whole world is singing my song. I guess I'll get the papers. Foxtrot. Let's okay. We'll try to figure out which one's 10-inch and which one's 12 here. Yeah, we'll let it go. I don't really know. Let's get the instructions here. We'll see what they say. Uh, 12 and 13. So we'll look back here. Item 12. Adjusting screw, 13 adjusting screw. That's helpful. Not. Cycle change. Let me do some reading here. We'll get back to you. Okay, I was wrong. there's a one-size-fits-all adjustment here. The way it works is if it's setting out too far, I loosen the back screw a quarter turn and then retighten the front one to lock it in place, and vice versa if it's going in too far. So, okay, that's locked back in place. Let's see what happens. Reject. Wow. Come on. Ah, perfect. Right on the groove where it belongs. Now this needle's shot, and this record's shot, so I'm not worried about it. These records are in bad shape. But let's see how we're doing here. There we go, it's going in. Eject, reject, whatever you want to call it. It definitely needs a new idler. And this, like so many of these era, I think it has no way of knowing, unless that holding that back matters. I don't think it knows when the last record's been played. Oh, yes it does. Ha! You clever sons of a guns. By inhibiting the movement of this guy, when this is down here, I could see it strain against it. It shut the motor off. Clever rascals. Come on. Okay, now that I know the mechanism's working, I'll take this off of the drawer. We'll strip off that old veneer and redo that, get that part of it done. Meanwhile, I'll take this apart, clean it. I don't know any way I can do that and do it on camera. This is going to have to go outside, get a good bath. And then get put back together. Oh, I've got to sand this down and paint it, prime it and paint it. This will have to get polished up. A tone arm looks real rough, but there's a section back here that I took some plastic polish to, and it looks gorgeous. So I think this is all going to clean up. I think this arm will clean up nicely. Fresh coat of paint, reflock it, and re-veneer the drawer. I'm going to sleep much better tonight knowing that this thing is absolutely going to work once it's in the unit. Okay, let me get this somewhat torn down. We'll take a look at the veneer. Okay, we'll try this again, this time with the microphone turned on. You saw the turntable wasn't driving, and this thing is as hard as a rock. And when I turned it over, like I tried on the last turntable, this one is so shot and so cracked that it got too big in diameter and it wouldn't even fit on the idler anymore. So I went out to the garage and I grabbed one of my O-ring kits and found an O-ring that was the same diameter, 2-inch OD, actually slightly less than 2-inch OD. I wanted it to be a fairly snug fit on the wheel. Stuck it on here to see what had happened, and there we go. So instead of buying a $50 or $70 idler wheel, an O-ring does the trick. And if this O-ring wears out, I've got a whole box of them out there. I think I paid something like $20 for the entire kit. And there's enough of the large diameter O-rings out there to do a dozen turntables. So don't waste your money on $54 idler wheels. And this is working just slick now. Gives me the confidence to go ahead and finish the restoration. Now I still don't know if it needs that hairspring on this little lever that's over here. Sometimes it flips up and goes almost straight up, and I don't know if the 12-inch record would miss it on the way down. I think it needs a little tiny hairspring just to ensure that it stays in the down position, because it kind of snaps up pretty quick. It's the mechanism spring-loaded in there. So I think it needs a hairspring, but I don't have any 12-inch records to test that. I've got nothing here but 10-inch records. I'll worry about that at a later date. Right now I'm going to get on with redoing the cabinet work here. And we'll just check and make sure that this shuts off at the end of the record. Let's run that in. Perfect. It's working perfectly. I still don't understand. I'll have to take a look underneath and see what exactly is happening. There's nothing underneath here that I can see. Absolutely nothing. There's no connection to anything in any way. This is just a post, and there's nothing connected to it there. So it's got to be when it restricts that little arm that that drops the next record. It's got to be triggering something under here. And I haven't read the theory of operation. I'll have to go back and read the theory of operation. It's in the SAMs for this. But whenever this is down here, I think it prevents this little latch from going back. It catches it. This is the little widget that comes out, pushes the next record off. I think it catches it, and when it catches it, I think that's what triggers the cycle to stop. Okay, let's get on with the restoration of the wood here. Okay, we've moved back into the main lab here for a bit because it's quieter. I don't have to use the boom microphone, and I've got a little bit better lighting in here. I want to address, I think it's 3 items, because I can hear the keyboard warriors out there firing up right now, and they're going to tell me that the O-ring's going to wear out too fast, or the O-ring isn't going to track correctly, or because I just grabbed a random O-ring, the diameter of the idler is going to be wrong and the record speed will be off. And I'm going to address all 3 of these, if you will allow me. Doesn't matter, I'm going to do it anyway. I looked at square profile O-rings. All the ones I could find on McMaster Carr, I could find diameters that were suitable, but this height is only about half, or maybe 2/3 of what this is. This is the original. They're meant to be O-rings, they're not meant to be tires. And what happens, or would happen, I actually have a couple of square profile ones. They want to fall into this little groove. Now the idler wheel is made out of 2 stamped pieces of sheet metal, and they're kind of shaped, well, I'd have to back the camera up here a little bit. They're kind of shaped like this. They've got a seam in the middle with a low spot in here, 2 flats, and a little flange on the top and the bottom. And my wonderful old man CAD drawing here kind of represents that. The square profile ones want to ride off of this radius and tip, and they don't want to run straight. The O-ring, on the other hand, is good and snug, and as soon as I dropped it into the idler, it snapped right into the center. Because of the round profile, it settled right into here, and locked itself in and ran just as straight and true as can be. Will it stretch over time and loosen up? Possibly. I could always drop a few drops of super glue right here. I think it's going to be fine. I'll find out, over time. And I know people are going to tell me this point contact right here is going to wear out prematurely. This thing might see 10 records a year if people want to see it run when they come over to visit. It's not going to be in constant play. I don't even care if it wears a little bit there. I contend what will happen is it will develop a small flat spot and the wear will stop as soon as it's worn the crown off of this side of the O-ring and develops a little bit of a flat. If that indeed even happens, the wear will virtually come to an end. Consider this the motor shaft with that little coil that they usually place over the top of the motor shaft. So it runs right on the crown, right on the point out here. It's going to be fine. And at roughly 20 cents an O-ring, if I have to put one a year on, I wouldn't care. I contend this is probably going to last as long as I'm alive and be just fine. So that addresses the wear. It addresses the centering and running true. The original tire fit, of course, right up to the flanges so that it sat on the flats here and here. And again, the one I tried, it didn't want to sit flat inside of here. And I spent about an hour on McMaster Car. I can find plenty with a decent or a reasonable ID/OD, but nothing that has enough height. And don't bother looking it up for me. I'm perfectly happy. This is what I'm going with. I'm not gonna. I don't even care. This works so well. It's what I'm gonna stick with. Now, as to the speed issue, let's call this our motor shaft here and here. Let's call this our idler, and this is our turntable. And let's make sure we're in frame here. Okay. Let's say our motor's turning at, I think the advertised or the theoretical speed of this motor, being a shaded pole, two-pole motor, is 3,600 RPM. Now it doesn't run that. It runs somewhat slower than that. But it's configured so that the diameter at the given RPM moves our turntable at the right speed to play the record. Let's take the diameter of this, and just for the sake of argument, say the circumference of this circle, let's say it's 1/2 inch. We're just throwing a number out there because it's an easy number to work with. So in one revolution of the motor, it travels 1/2 inch, or it advances 1/2 inch. Say the motor's turning this way. That's going to impart a motion over here of 1/2 inch from here to here. The same thing is going to happen here. It's going to move 1/2 inch. With my smaller wheel up here, while the wheel may spin faster because it's half the diameter, it's still, with every motor revolution, 1/2 inch of travel, this is going to move 1/2 inch. This is going to move 1/2 inch. So while this, if you were to drive from the center, if you were to be using the center of your wheel, this would turn at half the speed that this one does. However, the surface velocity on the periphery, or the outside diameter, or however you want to define it, this surface speed on the outside on this wheel is going to be identical to the surface speed on this wheel. Its diameter has zero effect, no effect whatsoever on the surface velocity of the idler. It does have an effect on how many RPM it turns, because it takes twice as many turns to go all the way around. But 1/2 inch of rotation imparts 1/2 inch of movement here and 1/2 inch of movement here as the wheel turns. The same as this one. The surface velocity, or the periphery velocity, or whatever you want to phrase it, is identical. It will have zero effect on the turntable speed, none whatsoever. And if you're having trouble getting your head around that, imagine cutting this and cutting this and laying these two out as a straight line. You've got a straight line here, and this one's a straight line that's half the length. Lay them on the motor shaft with the motor rotating. These two lines are moving at exactly the same speed. They will move exactly the same velocity when they're in contact with the motor shaft. Now this one's going to run out sooner, but it's in a circle, so it never stops going around. These two pieces laying on the motor shaft as the motor turns are moving at exactly the same velocity. Turn them back into a circle. They are moving at exactly the same surface or outside velocity, the surface speed, if you will, is identical on both of these. So that idler will have zero effect on the speed of the record itself. Here's an interesting fact. 78 RPM records were recorded anywhere from 72 RPM to about 86 RPM, I think it is. You remember the old Victrolas, the wind-up ones, you had a governor with flyweights, and there was a little speed adjustment on the top of the machine so you could adjust the record so it sounded the way you wanted it to sound. Back in the day, the early recordings were anything from 70 RPM to 60 RPM. What are the numbers? Let me get the numbers here. 72 RPM to 86 RPM are the two numbers. Get my facts here. And anyone who wants to argue that, go to the Yale University website. That's where I did my research. If you want to argue with somebody about the 72 to 86, go argue with Yale University, who did the research on this. And the actual speed of a 78 RPM, a 78 RPM record, is actually 78.26 RPM is the actual speed. Everybody calls them 78 RPM because it was an easy number to remember. Nobody wants to say 78.26 RPM. That would be silly. 78 is just the name they gave it. And again, 72 to 86 RPM was the range of speeds these records were recorded at way back in the 20s. Okay? Okay. And again, go argue with Yale. I think we're going to wrap this one up here today. We're up over half an hour at this point. And I don't want to do any, I don't want to do a lot of marathon videos. Everybody was very kind about the last one I did. But I'm going to go ahead and cut this one off here, and we'll pick it up again when I start doing oh boy, excuse me, the woodwork on the drawer for this set. Thanks for stopping by. I hope somebody found some of this helpful or informative. And again, if you have that type of an idler, an O-ring is going to work beautifully for you. And they're getting ludicrous amounts of money to retire these things. I'm probably going to make the guy that does this for a living real unhappy with advertising this information. So be it. Take care. Thanks for stopping by. Stay well. Bye-bye.